What's up, Elevate? Coming to you guys from a room that's very familiar. I've kind of repurposed it as a little mini studio for what I'm going to call the first episode of Make It Make Sense. So what I'm going to be doing is coming to you each week with the scripture that is found in our lesson, and we're going to just do a little bit of digging into it. So let's jump right in. All right. This week we're coming from Exodus chapter 17, verse 1 through 7. Okay. Here's what it says. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. But they camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord answered Moses, "Go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and the water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massa and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Okay, so first thing I want to talk about that kind of shows up in just the first verse of this scripture is the importance of obedience through inconvenience. Now, one of the first things that you see is that they were traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. So you got to know how inconvenient traveling can be when you've been displaced from a place that already really wasn't your home. You don't have belongings. You just came through a situation where you didn't have food, and now here you are getting told to move to multiple places. And so how this relates to us is oftentimes our obedience to God is never in question until it becomes the issue of inconvenience, until it's not in our schedule, until we have to find a babysitter, until it costs a little bit more money than we're willing to spend. And then sometimes our obedience to God gets put into question. And so this is definitely not a disclaimer to show that the children of Israel were the most obedient group of people, but this particular scripture does kind of give us a showing of the value of just being able to obey God, as he might tell you to get up and move and sit for a second, and get up and move and sit for a second, and get up and move and sit for a second. And maybe you don't understand the significance of it, but the point of it is to obey God. So let's move on. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is the problem with panicking. Now, let's read these verses. I'm going to start at verse 3. Or the bottom of verse 2. "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" But the people were thirsty for water, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children die, and our livestock die?" And so let me also jump down to the very end of this, because this is really what happens when you panic. This is what you're saying. You're saying the same thing that they said. Is the Lord among us or not? So here's why this is a problem. There are multiple verses in the Bible that tell us that once God is with us, he's always with us. He's not like with us and then he goes to, like, I don't know, go get a snack, or he's going to go on a trip, or even the fact that God is omnipotent and omnipresent. It's not like when he's with us and then he's with somebody else. We got to wait for him to get back. The beauty of God being God is that he's always with us. But oftentimes, the situations that we go through cause us to be a little bit panicky when it comes to whether or not God's going to show up, because two things we don't know. We don't know when he's going to show up, and we don't know how he's going to show up. A great example of this is, for those of you who follow the Avengers Endgame, or the whole saga, I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen it. You should have seen it if you haven't seen it. But if you haven't seen it, obviously Endgame implies that there's some situation that's being ended or fixed in this saga, right? And there's a lot of anxiety building up for every movie that came before it. But here's the thing. If you would have known how the story was going to end when the first movie came out, there'd be no anxiety. And likewise, in our life, if we knew exactly when and how he was going to fix our situations, we wouldn't have anxiety, even if it took some time because we would know exactly when and exactly how. But that's the beauty of faith. Faith is trusting in God when you don't know when and you don't know how. Okay, so that's a problem with panicking. So let me give you a couple of verses that kind of speak to the fact that God is always with us. Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. Our next one is Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Matthew 28:20, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you, and behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And then last but not least, Matthew chapter 1, verse 23, behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which means God with us. So you never have to really doubt if God is with you, okay? Last thing I want to talk about is this, the value and the memory of past victories, okay? Here's where this comes into play. During this conversation between the Lord and Moses, the Lord gives him instructions, and his instructions go like this. He says, go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile. The staff with which you struck the Nile. Not just take your staff, but take your staff with which you struck the Nile. Why is this significant? Because the Nile was a situation where the waters had to be parted out of the way to provide protection. So in essence, God was showing him that I'm going to take the very thing that you needed to give you protection and allow it to provide for you water as well. What does that mean for us? Oftentimes we can get amnesia and forget that God will provide for us. And sometimes God will make ways for us to be reminded about the fact that he's done things for us in the past, and that we should never really panic because he's already brought us out, he's already brought us over, he's already brought us through. And every so often he'll give us reminders, or he'll use things to prompt us to remember, oh man, I forgot that God already had me, so I really don't have to worry. So let's recap really quick. The first thing, the importance of obedience through inconvenience. The second is the problem with panicking. And then let me give you the scriptures that went with that. Joshua 1:9, Isaiah 41:10, Deuteronomy 31:6, Matthew 21:20, and Matthew 1:23. And then last but not least, the value and the memory of past victories. So with that being said, thank you for your time, and I'll see you guys Saturday.